Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday's ESPN FC Live. My name is Mark Donaldson. Delighted to be alongside the former Liverpool player Stevie Nicol and from ESPN.com, Ryan O'Hanlon. Later in the show, we'll be previewing the international games coming up this weekend. But I want to start with an article that Ryan has written. Basically, he's gone through the top leagues in Europe and analysed who's doing well and who isn't with regards to getting the best bang for your buck. Who has achieved the most right now by spending the least? So we'll start with the full screen graphic that will show us a bit of a surprise at number one. In fact, the top 10, all of these teams haven't spent too much, but have probably overachieved, including Heidenheim in position number one with the longest-serving manager in the history of German football, Frank Schmidt, a team that came up on the final day of last season from the second Bundesliga, and they're holding their own. First of all, Ryan, what was the criteria behind your placings as we rank Europe's top leagues?
Yeah, so I just looked at we don't have totally precise wage data for players because finances in European soccer are purposely opaque, as we're finding out with all of the various financial shenanigans that are happening in the Premier League than elsewhere. But from the site Football Reference, they have relatively accurate estimations of teams' wages. So what I did was I just looked at the wage bill for every team in Europe and essentially calculated how many dollars they're spending per point that they've won. And then in order to compare all the teams across Europe, I looked at each league's average and then compared the leagues to each other, because if you compared each team to the league average and then ranked them, because if you just did like a Europe-wide average, all the Premier League teams would be in the bottom, because the point per game totals for each team, or dollar per point per game, to make it as confusing as possible. In the Premier League, it's about $100,000 are being spent per point one in the Premier League per game, while second highest is the Bundesliga at 58,000. So there's a big discrepancy. So what I just said, with the Bundesliga being second and Heidenheim are basically a mid-table team this year in the Bundesliga, and as you alluded to, they have the longest serving manager history of Germany. They were a mid-table team in terms of wages in the second division in Germany. And so they've increased their spend a little bit when they've gone up, but they're one of the lowest wage bills in Europe, and they're a mid-table team in Germany. Germany's the second highest spending league after the Premier League. Therefore, Heidenheim is number one on the list.
We'll get to the juicy stuff. Who's bottom? Who's wasting so much money in a second? And I'm sure you can guess some of the teams that will be down there. But Stevie Nicol, looking at number 5, Girona, number 6, Luton. There are players that play for Luton that have been with them through all the divisions. And for Girona, it's only their 4th season in the top flight. Football needs that, doesn't it? Football needs these fairy tale stories.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the key, particularly with the two teams you've just spoken about there, the mixture that they have of youth and experience, I think, is the key. You know, you've got people like Ross Barkley at Luton pulling along young guys like Morris, who have been around for a while but don't know what the Premier League's all about. And the same with Girona. You got Daley Blind there, and then you got the young Brazilian Savio. So I think the key for all of these teams, yes, we're talking about money and spend and net spend and all this, but the key to the makeup of the team, to me, is about the mixture, the blend of experience and youth. And obviously, when you have such an old campaigner leading Heidenheim who knows what he's doing with that mix, then you end up getting real good results. And for me, I would like to have seen Girona up the top. I know this is about calculations, but personally, when I look around Europe, I find it hard to see how Girona's not number one. I mean, sitting in the top of the Spanish league for so long, clearly they were going to have a hiccup. They're having it right now, pretty much. But I tell you, if I was to choose my number one, it would be Girona. They've been scaring the big boys in Real Madrid and Barcelona all season. And as good as Heidenheim are doing, I think for me, Girona would probably be my number one.
Let's get straight be those that have either wasted money or have spent so much that they are not Europe's smartest spenders, according to the graphic at the bottom of the screen. This is the bottom 10. So if the top 10 are Europe's smartest spenders, Ryan, what are this lot?
I think people will be surprised to see. Of these teams, they'll be surprised to see Real Madrid, I guess, in the bottom 10, right? Because they're easily winning La Liga. They're one of the more successful teams in Europe over the past decade, etc. But I think it just points to like the situation in La Liga. It's as if you took like Manchester City. You took Manchester United's wage bill, but maybe a better functioning organization, and then took, let's say, Tottenham, and then put them in a different league where all of the other Premier League teams were like able to spend as much as the teams in the Championship. So like the financial disparity in La Liga is like absurd, to the point where it's almost just like how do you not win La Liga or come in second every year? Like you have to like almost actively make your team terrible, basically, I would say, for a team like Real or even Barcelona to sort of just the sheer force of the gravity of their spending, pushing them into the top. But I think among the other teams in this list, we see Man U, obviously, last ranked team in the Premier League, and their wage bill is basically competitive with Manchester City at the highest level in the Premier League, which makes them one of the highest spending teams in the world. I think top 3 or 4 in terms of wage bill, and they're currently in 6th place. So you do the math there, and that's how you end up in the 90s of this list.
We'll get stuck into the top 6 from the Premier League in a second and show you where they lie in this list. But Stevie, I just want to go back to the bottom 10 spenders and kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, because you would think, and we'll get on to Chelsea in a second and their 1.1 billion spent, but this is more on wages that's costing the club. Real Madrid spent a lot of money, but they got Jude Bellingham, and look at the impact he is having.
Right.
Bayern Munich have got Harry Kane. Look at the impact he is having. So what's the secret, do you reckon, if you're spending a lot of money on stars? It's not all about that. It's about what you surround them with, isn't it?
Yeah, clearly it's what you surround them with, but again, you have to be producing silverware as well. If you want to be in that position as far as spending money is concerned, then you have to have something on the end of it. And when I look at that list, it's not just about getting silverware and spending money. You have to do it in a way that you're not jeopardizing the standing of the club. And if there's one club that, in my mind, is doing that, it's Barcelona.
Yeah.
They've kind of sold a lot of the crown jewels. You can argue that some of the signings haven't been particularly great, certainly haven't worked out. Look what they're doing in the league. They're not going to win the league. There's no chance. They find themselves in a fortunate position in the Champions League that they've had a good draw and they could end up in the final of the Champions League. But they've done it all to the detriment of the future of the club, in my opinion. It's one thing to take money out of the base of your club, but how do you replace it? Where are you going to put it back? And then add on top of that you've signed players that everybody's kind of scratching their head and saying, really? Like Christensen from Chelsea, for me, really? You're struggling for money and you go and sign somebody like him? A lot of their decisions have been questionable, but for a lucky draw in the Champions League, they could be in real trouble. So, yeah, I look at that list and I kind of don't have too much of a problem, particularly with the Real Madrid. If you spend 100 million on somebody and you're sitting top of the league and you're still in the Champions League and you're flying and he's your top goal scorer in your league, then you can accept spending that amount of money. But I look at Barcelona and I scratch my head and I wonder where they're going to be in 3 or 4 years, because I don't know how they're going to replace all that money that they took out of the club.
Just before, Ryan, we move on to the top 6 in the Premier League. Paris Saint-Germain bottom. Stevie made the point there about, if you're going to spend, you want to get silverware. They didn't buy all these superstars over the last few years to win the French top flight. They bought them to win the Champions League. Is that the reason that they're bottom?
Yeah, I mean, they're bottom because they have the highest payroll of any team in Europe, and they play in France, which the average payroll of those teams is significantly lower than all the teams in the other leagues. It's at the points per. Sorry, I created this incredibly complicated term. Dollars spent per 0.1 per game is like in the 40,000 range in Liga, while it's in the 100,000 range in the Premier League. And yet PSG is the highest spending team in the world. So when you make that comparison and you look at the fact that PSG it's not like they're winning like 100 points per season in Liga. They're winning, 85. So when you do the points per dollar spent, you drop all the way to the bottom. But obviously for them, yes, the Champions League is the thing that they're going for. But I think even just looking at this list, right, like I said, they're the highest spending team in Europe, and they've made the Champions League final once, and only really come close to winning it, I would even say once, since Qatar took over.
Okay. The top 6 in England. Look, higher up the table, the likes of Brighton and Brentford, because they've done really well. It's like kind of Porto, an Ajax model. It's find good scouting, get good players in, sell them for lots of money to Chelsea. At least that's what Brighton have done. So Liverpool out of the top 6, or the big 6, not the top 6 in the Premier League, are higher ranked. Manchester United, no, not very good for what they have spent. Stevie, as far as Liverpool's spend has been concerned and what they're paying their players right now, are they overachieving, underachieving, or about right?
I would think they're about right.
Okay.
Listen to it. See, here's one of the problems to calculate this is that, every league plays, there's only so many points you can get. If you're going to do this and you're going to weigh things up by points, then the league that has the most money is going to spend more money, and there's only so many points you can get, and that other leagues can get the same amount of points. So, in some ways it's very difficult to figure out who's spending the money more wisely or who spent it better. But as far as Liverpool, I would suggest that they're probably in and around the right place. They're not the biggest spenders, but they're competing on every front, not just domestically, but in Europe as well. And so you can't argue that they've put themselves in that position, A, by spending the amount of money they have, and B, by spending it wisely, that they're competing on every front. Obviously, up until the weekend when they lost in the FA Cup. So yeah, I don't think you can argue, or anybody can argue, that Liverpool, yes, have spent a lot of money, but they certainly seem to have spent it wisely.
I'll tell you what, the money you spent on ventriloquist lessons was definitely worth it, because you were able to say all that without your lips moving for a large chunk of time when your picture froze. Final question, and hopefully your Wi-Fi is back. I know Ryan's done this based on wages and everything like that. Who's wasted the most money in the Premier League, Stevie? Is it Chelsea? Is it Manchester United? Or is it someone else?
What an easy! I wish you had so many easy questions like that. Absolutely, Chelsea.
A wee softball.
What a dolly! That's what you call a dolly question.
It is. It's called check your Wi-Fi and see if it's back, and hopefully we don't get a decent response.
Yeah, no. I don't think anybody's going to argue that the answer to that is Chelsea.
Okay, right. We move on. Thank you to Ryan. By the way, before we do move on, Ryan, where can we find your article that we have just spent 10 minutes discussing?
A little-known website called ESPN.com /soccer.
Indeed. Okay, let's move on to the weekend international fixtures. England-Brazil at Wembley on Saturday. France against Germany. Netherlands against Scotland later today. Stevie, let's start with France against Germany. The favourites for the Euros against the hosts for the Euros. It's not the same Germany that our grandmothers and grandfathers grew up remembering, is it?
Not even close. This is a what are we going to get Germany? I mean, you used to know exactly what was on the tin when you played against Germany, but not this group right now. I mean, regardless of who they play against, you're not sure they're going to win. I mean, they've had two horrible results recently against Turkey and Austria where they lost. And to try and dissect those two performances, to try and pick out the positives is very difficult. And so what do? Now you play France. In my opinion, probably the favourites to win the Euros. And obviously where Nagelsmann finds himself, he's trying to figure out what player fits in what piece and how do I put all these pieces together? How do I set up? What system do I play? Do I play 3 at the back? Do I play 4? Do I play 3 up front? Do I play 2? I mean, Nagelsmann has so many questions. And unfortunately for him, this game is going to be another experiment. And unfortunately, when you're experimenting, if you take some heavy beatings, it really does knock you back. So it's really difficult to try and sum up Germany right now. Because as I said at the start, you don't know what you're going to get. And I don't believe getting hammered by France leading up to a Euros in your own country is going to do anybody any good. So, yeah, Germany's in a real strange position. A position in my lifetime I've never, ever seen them. They're struggling big time.
We're not complaining, are we, that Scotland have ended up in that group? Because with Switzerland and Hungary, I'm sure all the other 3 teams will feel it depends which Germany shows up in the opening game of the Euros.
Yeah, I think I know we'll go on to Scotland in a wee minute, but I think Scotland's game against the Netherlands is going to be a real test of what Scotland can do against Germany in that opening game. If they can produce a performance, then they can take that into the Euros knowing what they're capable of. As I mentioned about Germany, if France give them a bit of a hiding, by the time the Euros come along, it's hard to forget these sorts of things. So, yeah, as I said, real strange place to find Germany.
Ryan, how good are France right now?
I mean, they're just they're just elite. Like, no matter what, like who is healthy, who's injured, etc. Like, as long as Mbappe, I feel like, is healthy, this is probably the best team in the world. I mean, we even saw at the World Cup. It's easy to forget how many injuries they had right before the World Cup, how many key players were missing. Benzema, Kanté, Pogba all didn't play. It's also funny to think that like those used to be important players for France and now they're not even in the picture. So yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that's sort of as the police are coming to get me, it's better than my Wi-Fi going out like last time. I think the benefit for Germany is I just like France are just they do have the capacity to blow teams off the field, right? But that's sort of never been the team that they've been under Deschamps. So I think at least for Nagelsmann, I think there's a possibility he can experiment in a little bit in this game and they could lose, but it won't be like a 5-0 type massacre just because I think France have always sort of left everyone wanting more a little bit under Deschamps, despite them being excellent and winning World Cup and making the final of the last World Cup.
Every time you're on, there's always sirens in the background. I'm just wondering if you're just like round the corner from LAPD or what is going on in Los Angeles with you. But right on cue, they don't disappoint.
Hopefully there's not a geolocation thing on this call so they can't find me.
England, Brazil. We'll get to Netherlands, Scotland in a second, Stevie. But England against Brazil. No Neymar and the 2 goalies, Ederson and Alisson, both out as well. For those of us of a certain vintage, it's the Seleção, it's Brazil, it's the 70s, the 80s. It's just probably the best team in the world back then. They're not any longer, are they?
No, it's incredible to think that both Germany and Brazil, who really were the pioneers of how to play international football and win games and do it in style, find themselves in such a position. I mean, yeah, they've got some names. They've still got Vinny Jr. After that, I'm struggling. I mean, who do you want in this? What's probably going to start against England? Who do you want in your team. And right now, there isn't that many. I mean, Rafinha isn't a regular starter for Barcelona. He's probably going to start. Richarlison probably, who might start as well, he's not a fixture at Spurs, really, if everybody's 100% fit. I mean, you just go through the team and you wonder where the superstars are that we've been so used to watching and admiring for so many years. So, yeah, they're on a horrible run. I mean, if you want to be positive, they sit in a qualifying position in the qualifiers for the World Cup. But the fact is, they're sixth. I mean, this is a team that, at the worst, should be sitting second behind Argentina, and they're floundering. So, yeah, this is not vintage Brazil by a long, long way. And you kind of wonder when we're ever going to see that again, because are they producing players? Yes, they are. But I tell you what, they're not producing teams. Not right now.
Is the fear factor with Brazil gone, Stevie? Because back in the day, it was like, oh, look at all these players. Now, oh, it's Brazil. I mean, England-Brazil's a glamour fixture. Don't get me wrong. But does Brazil still have that fear factor with their name?
No, absolutely not. No, it used to be if you're playing Brazil, it's, wow, who are we playing against? You know, who am I up against?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think you're kind of in awe of stepping on the field because all you have in your head is the vintage Brazil. But not now. Now, when you say we're playing Brazil, you go, right, this is going to be great. And we turn these over. We're going to turn Brazil over. And we should turn Brazil over. I mean, that's kind of the narrative. If you're a player stepping on the field, you have gone from, oh no, what have we done? Let's not poke the bear. Let's just keep it quiet and try and shut things down. Now it's let's get after them. Let's push them back. Let's show them what it's like to be on the other end of a hiding. I mean, the narrative has completely turned itself upside down as far as Brazil stepping on a football field.
Ryan, as far as England are concerned, no Harry Kane. An ankle problem will keep him out of the Brazil game, but they hope to have him back for the Belgium game in midweek. Who would you pick as the best successor or person who plays when Harry Kane doesn't, between Ivan Toney and Ollie Watkins?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's sort of irreplaceable in doing both a striker and like a creative midfielder thing that he does, where he drops deep but also gets on the end of chances. But I think I would go with Watkins of the two. I think he's sort of having, like, I guess because of the existence of Harry Kane, it's easy to forget like how great of a season Watkins is having. Like, his output is like a superstar level thing, and I think it's the main reason why Aston Villa are probably going to finish in the Champions League places this season. So yeah, I think Watkins, and just the style that Villa plays is sort of akin to the way that England tries to play, a more sort of controlled, slower possession style, while I think Brentford are much more direct than England sort of ever are. Maybe against Brazil they'll have to be, but I think Watkins just fits a lot better sort of into the general structure of the team. And then I think Tony's only played a handful of games, but Watkins he's been like truly fantastic. One of the best players in the Premier League this season.
Final question about England, Stevie. I know your colours are nailed to the mast with Liverpool, but can you allow yourself an admiring glance to Old Trafford for Kobbie Mainoo, who's in the squad for England, and the talent that he has and what he could become?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with the ball at his feet, I mean, the kid he's playing way beyond his years, way beyond the short time that he's been in the first team, and way beyond the lack of experience that he really does have. So yeah, on the ball, I think he's been absolutely nothing short of incredible for Manchester United. The one question I have is I'm not sure yet what he's like without the ball. You know, a lot of teams have been getting at Manchester United, and you wonder whether it's the actual makeup of their midfield, or you wonder whether it's the individuals defensively that are not able to stop anybody getting through them. So that would be my one question about Mainoo. You know, without the ball, what does he do defensively? Is he in the right spots? Is he making the right decisions? And having not seen him live on any occasion, it's really hard to pinpoint whether he does do that or not. But on the other side of the coin, with the ball at his feet, I mean, the guy just looks. He knows what he's doing. You know, he makes things look easy. He looks comfortable. He looks the usual line where you can see somebody with the ball at their feet is they make it look so easy, and they have so much time. And he always looks as though he's got time. He always looks as though he's figured it out, where he's playing it, how he's playing it, the pace of the pass, all of those things. He looks to do all these things very comfortably. So, yeah, I mean, there's no question. Going forward, he's an England player.
We'll wrap up our international chat with the Netherlands against Scotland later today. Now, producer Sam always gives us a rundown, little bullet points, possible discussion points. Simply for Netherlands-Scotland, it says, happy with whatever unbiased way you'd like to take this one, Stevie Nicol. So, well, if they're going to win the Euros, does it matter what happens in friendlies for Scotland, or is this a big test?
Well, for the reason I gave earlier on, I think it's important because if Scotland can go to the Netherlands, and I'm not talking about winning the game, I'm not talking about getting a result, I'm talking about performing that you're competitive against a team like the Netherlands away from home. If you can show you're competitive, then you shouldn't be scared of going and playing against Germany in Germany against the side that are not exactly what we're used to. So I think this game is important. You know, if Scotland lose 3 or 4-0 comfortably, then you have to question whether they're going to be able to walk into Germany, play against the Germans at home and get a result. As opposed to, from a player's point of view and a coach's point of view as well, if you go to Holland and play against the Dutch, and whether you win, lose or draw, it's competitive and they know they've been in a game and you know that there may be 2 or 3 things you could have done better to get a result. That is huge going into a major tournament, and particularly playing against the host nation in their own backyard. So, yeah, I think this game is important for Scotland. Okay,
well, it's only 20 years since Greece shocked the world of football by winning the Euros. So, again, this will tell us a lot.
Whoa there. Get the reins on. Hey,
get the reins on. Let me dream. Let me dream. We can't have Burley being the last Scotland player at a World Cup, and he works
way beyond dreaming, by the way.
I know, but that's what it's about. Let the disappointment begin in June, but up until then, we haven't lost these 3 goals, and we haven't been beaten by Northern Ireland on Tuesday yet. So just let us dream, Stevie Nicol. I deliberately left you out of that one, Ryan, because Stevie's more pragmatic, because he's played there. He knows what happens. At least as a fan, we can dream. We're going to end today with a wee bit of an exclusive. We've got a little bit of a clip for you from the Gavin Jules podcast with Ben Davies, who they met this week. And Ben's been talking about many things to do with Spurs, to do with Wales, who had that good win yesterday, and to do with Harry Kane, because Ben was there right at the start when he missed that penalty in his debut against Hearts. Let's hear from them.
And what I'm fascinated is, I believe you and Harry Kane are the same age.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me, when you arrive at, so then you would have arrived at Spurs.
You had no doubt about Spurs, right? Once they came in, you said, yeah, this is great.
No, at the time there were a couple of clubs who were interested. I'd played pretty much 2 full seasons on the bounce in the Premier League, which at 19 for a defender is it's not really done that often. And there were a few clubs around, but Tottenham were the first ones that showed any real interest, and it was a club I thought I could grow at. Look, I was from Swansea. It's a one-club city. You don't realise how big the other clubs are.
Yeah.
And moving to Tottenham, I think, was a big wake-up call for me. I was like, well, this is proper now. We're like at a big club. There's big fan base in a big city. It was intense, but yeah, it was the right move for me.
So you were 21 at this stage.
Yes.
So I'm curious, because when you arrived there, because most people know the Harry Kane story about how he kept going on loan, scoring a bazillion goals, the League Cup, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, the manager starts playing him regularly, and then thus is born the legend of Harry Kane. But when you got there, you were training with him, and he was still kind of there and not there and on loan, and I'm assuming you would have preseason with him.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that? Honestly. Like, we won't tell him.
Yeah.
Like, did you see, like, oh, hey, this dude should be playing all the time because he's really, really good?
It was.
Or did he improve?
It was pretty crazy because when I arrived, there were a few times where Harry Kane maybe wasn't even in the squad for games. But what you saw in training was this. He was hungry. You could see he had this. Well, one, he was an incredible finisher. That was the biggest thing that stands out. And it's
Like
probably
at training,
his whole
you
career.
mean?
It's
Everything
training.
was going in.
He'd get the ball and you'd play a small-sided game, and every single game he was scoring 3-4 goals.
Yeah.
Maybe his link-up play wasn't there. Maybe his passing wasn't there, but he was so driven that when I get the ball, it's going in the net.
Yeah.
And you could see it over and over and over. And there were times where, at the start of that season, when Pochettino came in, he wasn't selected, and he was coming on. And I think for Villa away, he came on, scored a free kick, and never looked back, was in the team pretty much every week from then on, and he's done pretty well.
The full interview with Ben Davies from the Gab and Jules podcast available now. Part 1 is out, part 2 to come next week. You can get it at the usual podcast providers. My thanks to Stevie and to Ryan. If you're watching the international games this weekend, enjoy. We will see you all again soon. Bye for now.